The motivation really sucks. You open a new level, you start at the editor for 10 seconds, you close the editor and close Geometry Dash, you uninstall the game, break your monitor in half, and reconsider your life choice. Don't worry, we've all been through that situation. I've had that feeling several times. A lot of people think I'm always motivated, and I've actually got this one question way too many times. How are you always motivated? How do you get inspiration? How do you build so many levels that fast? And I'm gonna be very clear here. I am definitely not always motivated. Here. Yeah, I'm not always motivated. Okay, so there are a couple things you can do to avoid the motivation, and I'll explain some of them in this video, but this doesn't mean you'll always be motivated. The motivation is a human thing. You will definitely be demotivated at some point, but there are things you can do to deal with it. Of course, sometimes you just gotta understand the feeling and leave it alone. It's not really good to force yourself to create if you're not up for it. Also, a few things you gotta make sure to understand. One, this video is based on my opinion. You might disagree with it, and that's okay. You can share your thoughts in the comments. Number two, if you suddenly feel demotivated to do many things you loved doing before for no apparent reason, do a check-in on your mental health, preferably with a professional. Okay, enough of that. You clicked in the video because you want to know why you're demotivated or how to solve it, and I promise I'll help you in a bit, but before that, we gotta understand what motivation is. According to the Very Well Mind website, the term motivation describes why a person does something. It is the driving force behind the human actions. Motivation is the process that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-oriented behaviors. For instance, motivation is what helps you lose action.
In short, motivation causes you to act in a way that...
So, to put it short, describes why a person does something. Why do you go to the gym? Why do you study? Why do you create? So we figured out what motivation is. Now it's time to figure out what might have caused this case of demotivation. The only way of figuring out how to stay motivated is to find out why you create in the first place, what your goal is when you create. There are many reasons that can lead you to create, and I'll go through the most common ones I've seen and why they are not sustainable. Some people's motivation to create, and I think the most common one, is to get creator points. This one happens especially with new creators who see others with many creator points, or simply because they want that UFO even though it's not even that good to play with. Building only for creator points is unsustainable, since your fuel to keep creating is solely based on the fact that the level gets rated, which sometimes is purely based on luck. This can very quickly lead to burnout and demotivation. It makes a lot of newer creators quit creating just for the fact they didn't get what they wanted with the level. Plus, what are you gonna do when you get the creator points? Like, what are you building for now? Remember, what I'm saying here is towards building only and ultimately for creator points. Getting creator points isn't bad at all, and I'll get more into that later in the video. Some other people are motivated to create because they want to impress others or be the best creator they can. I do respect the hustle of like trying to always do your best and impress others. I really do. But this is also not a sustainable reason to create at all. You're basically putting your happiness in creating based on what other people think of your creation, which can lead to obsessive comparison, doubting yourself, and burnout. I've always been the dude who didn't really care about quality that much, but there was a point where I went and tried doing my absolute best for a couple of levels in a row, like to the point I was forcing myself, and let me tell you, that very quickly led to such a burnout, to the point I quit the game for several months. Not fun at all. So I see getting creator points as a side effect for the most part, but also something nice to achieve. As the top 100 creator, I can definitely say that for me, going up the leaderboards and increasing the amount of creator points in my account is definitely something I've always found fun. And while getting rates and creator points is rewarding, it's definitely not my ultimate goal. My ultimate goal with creating, as stupid or as plain as this may sound, is simply to have fun. I know, it's crazy. That's not all there is to it though, let me explain. Of course, back on my early days of creating, especially when I had no creator points, I really wanted to get one, and I was very immature about it, to say the least. You would often find me complaining on how other levels got rated and mine didn't, and you would also find me rate begging when I would release the level. That's because I also found motivation mainly on the creator point factor. Of course, I still had fun, but I was so obsessed with the reward that it became basically my main reason to create. Once I got the creator points though, that gave me a huge boost since I was hitting my goals, which were getting the levels rated. Slowly, once I got more creator points, I was excited to get more and to achieve this little goals I put for myself, but ironically enough, I started caring less about the whole creator point thing, because once you get a few of them, you start to realize it's nothing too special. It's just a stat in a video game, the same as stars, secret coins, diamonds, whatever other stat in any video game. Still, I've always liked putting short-term goals to keep me pumped into it, and that's a good thing. It constantly gives you motivation and another reason to keep going. Once I had 10 creator points, getting to 20 was a reasonable goal, which I could reach within a couple weeks or months of building. Same thing from 20 to 30, 30 to 40, and so on. You get the point. After those 60 creator points, it clicked to me that I was getting close to being the top 100 creator, which has always been an unreal thing for me. It's still crazy. Then I grinded super hard since the goal is getting closer and closer. And reaching the top 100 creator leaderboards became my source of motivation. Since it became my motivation, once I actually reached that goal, I was kind of... yeah, I was grinding a lot, having tons of fun. I was super excited to reach the top 100, but what happens after I reach it? I was feeling a bit lost and demotivated. But back then, since I was getting creator points really fast, people really complained that I wasn't doing my best or putting the most effort into my levels. And while I didn't care about that, I just wanted to have fun, those comments always got to me, especially after I reached the top 100. It's kind of starting to hurt, personally. You know, when you don't really know what to do anymore, that bird was so loud. And when you don't really know what to do anymore and people are always complaining about your levels by saying you don't put enough effort into them, that leads to burnout. At a point after I reached the top 100, I decided that it was time for me to really try and do the best I could, but I would never break this one rule I subconsciously put to myself. I would not force myself to build something if I wasn't having fun with it, even though I broke the rule and kind of forced myself to build sometimes. But either way, I started a project, many of which I never finished, even though they were crazy compared to my other works, such as yogurt, simply because my creating philosophy became build because you like building. It's a hobby. It's a fun thing to do every now and then. It's a way I can express myself sometimes. The GD editor is a tool where I can combine certain colors and shapes to make some stuff, whether that is a simple modern level or a masterpiece. Creator points are still a reward and a way of setting up short and long-term goals, but for me, the ultimate goal in playing the game is to have fun. After all, it's a video game, not your full-time job, and that's my first tip on how to stay motivated. People sometimes forget what games are made for. If you want to avoid burnout, first thing you have to stop doing is taking the game too seriously. Another important thing about Another important thing about motivation that a lot of people don't know is that it's not a linear process like this. It's actually an endless loop, and you can start it whenever you would like. This is Ausk from a couple months later after I recorded that voiceover. This is not how it works entirely. To be very clear, this doesn't work the same for everyone, and it's not the same for everyone, not even for me. I've been diagnosed with ADHD like this week, but it's generally a thing, and it works for most people. But if you have ADHD, this is different. It's harder for you to focus. It's harder for you to get motivation because you lack dopamine. It's a general rule, but the ADHD brain looks for things that are fun to do. So if you make GD a chore rather than, you know, an actual fun thing to do, you're just gonna be less and less motivated to do anything in the game. Okay, back to present Ausk now. If we actually just get up and do it, which is the action part of the loop, we can trigger the inspiration part, which can motivate us to do more in the long run, and then the loop continues, and that's tip number 2. This has happened to me several times. Trust me, it works. I'm not saying you gotta force yourself to build, but sometimes pushing through can be good. Now, as the third tip, ideas come from ideas, and that's okay. It's okay to be inspired by a level. It's okay to make something similar to something you've already seen. Creativity is not only about originality, it's about how you present an idea, even if it was already done before. Originality refers to the first of its kind, something that has never been done before. Creativity means thinking up new ideas and approaches. I am in no way saying that copying is justified or something good to do. You should never directly copy someone's work. What I'm saying is that you don't have to bring up absolutely new ideas every time. You don't have to make an effect or concept that was never done before. You don't have to create a new style. You can still make a usual glow or modern level. After all, it's your level. You can still be proud of it. I'm definitely more of a modern creator, and while my levels don't have crazy concepts and absolutely new ideas that were never done before, I can assure you they have my little thing to them. You can notice this in many levels by other creators. For instance, who do you think made this level? Unless you have no idea who Nemzi is, you'll probably guessed Nemzi, which is correct. This level isn't original, literally speaking, since it's something that has been done before, but it's still a creative level. You didn't guess that Nemzi made it because it's original or because it has ideas that were never done before, but because it has Nemzi's little touch to it and follows a certain pattern, making it recognizable and making it his own level. I could try making a level in this style, but unless I directly copied it, it wouldn't be the same because it would have my take on it. my own touch to it. So yeah, there's not much to it. It's not that deep. You can make a so-called generic or typical level and still be proud of what you made. Speaking of being proud, despite how much you like what you've made, don't let it get to your head, not just in life in general, but also in terms of creating. Everyone should be open for giving and receiving feedback, despite the amount of experience you might have. I once didn't like to take any feedback, and that definitely wasn't something good for my creations in the long run, because that makes you see feedback as something negative, and you start getting demotivated by any type of criticism, even if it's constructive. My friend Riley gives a good example on how to interact with feedback here. My philosophy is as follows: if the feedback is visual or quite surface level, I will consider it and take some step to implement it if I agree with it. If it's conceptual or deeper feedback, I will not implement it, but I will remember it for my next level. This doesn't apply to already released stuff other than bug fixes, and I absolutely agree on this. But keep in mind, you have to balance what really is helpful and constructive feedback and what is just someone trying to bring your creation down. Also avoid too much perfectionism. As Riley says here again, is it really your level if you make it solely for the player? And that's totally true. It goes back to what I've talked about earlier in the video about the people pleasing and all that stuff. So I've played this game for a couple years now, and over time and experience, I'm still learning a lot, but I hope what I brought up here was solid enough to help all of you out there who struggle with motivation and goals in terms of creation. Maybe not all of you, but at least some of you. I really hope it did help. So to sum it up, answering the question, why am I so demotivated? You're probably getting your motivation from the wrong place. How can I stay motivated? Number 1, stop taking the game too seriously. Number 2, do something, take action. Start, even if it's a 2-second layout, just do something in the editor. You might end up liking it and get motivated to do more. Number 3, understand it's okay to make unoriginal levels. Creativity and originality are different things. Number 4, learn when and how to take feedback. And last but definitely not least, number 5, stop trying to please people. This I can't stress enough how important this one is. I have a brand new Discord server that you can join if you'd like. Also watch this other video if you want to learn a little bit more about creating. I appreciate contributions in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.